Hello, and welcome back to the Rawkode Academy. I'm your host, David Flanagan, known across the internet as Rawkode. Today is another episode of Rawkode Live, a show where we get hands-on with really cool software, just in general, within the cloud native space, the Kubernetes space, the front-end space, the API space, you name it. And today is no exception. Today, we're taking a look at Graphbase. It is a platform for building GraphQL-based APIs. Now, to join us today and guide us on our journey is founder and CEO, Frederick. Hello, how are you?
Hey, thanks for having me.
No, my pleasure. It's always a joy for me when there's a product out there, a piece of software that I discover, and I'm like, I could use that. And then when we get to do a session on it, I'm always even more pumped. And then to top it, the wee cherry on the cake is this is all powered by some pretty cool Rust code as well. So again, my pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. Now,
Thanks. Yes, my name is Frederick.
yeah, please go take it away.
Yeah. My name is Frederick. I'm the founder of Graphbase. And just a 1 minute summary of Graphbase. It's a fully managed GraphQL platform with a focus on developer experience. So I've been using GraphQL almost since the beginning, since 2015, 2016. I was previously the CTO at a company called The Real, based in San Francisco. And we were building front-end experiences as people do, web and native iOS and Android. And we had lots of data silos, and we were using microservices and REST APIs. And we discovered GraphQL as a way to solve some of the challenges that we had, in terms of optimizing for a number of requests, only fetching what the client needs. So we adopted GraphQL early on, and I've been a fan ever since. And when I left The Real 3 years ago, I decided to build a company called Graphbase, which is essentially a developer experience play to build and deploy GraphQL APIs, similar to what Netlify and Vercel have done for the front-end cloud. We are doing for the GraphQL cloud.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Let's touch on a few of those points, just because I feel there'll be good context for the audience. Now, you said that GraphQL solves a certain subset or a certain set of challenges, right, that people have with REST APIs or REST-like APIs. I definitely feel the same. I do not enjoy building CRUD REST-style APIs. GraphQL comes with a type system, which I think just solves more problems than we get, but we do get some challenges. Can you maybe go into them in a little bit more details where people struggle with GraphQL and why they may want to look at something like Graphbase and what challenges it solves?
Definitely. So I mean, it's fair to say that starting off building a REST API is easier. You can quickly, on any kind of framework or language, set up a RESTful route. You have a resource, typically it starts with users or something like that, and you go posts, comments, or whatever it is you're building. And it's quite intuitive, but it's not documented most likely. You probably don't have any types or documentation, like I said, and you start building your front end application. But once you start querying multiple things, you will make multiple requests to your API. So performance suffers, as well as fetching the data that you need to display the page. With REST, it varies, but most likely you will just fetch the whole resource, even if you only need a subset of the fields of that resource. So the payload is also bigger. And when you start evolving the schema, you've all seen it, V1, V2, V3, it's quite painful to have multiple REST endpoints of the same resource, and GraphQL really solves a lot of that. But to address the question, building GraphQL APIs has a steeper learning curve, right? So I would say Graphbase helps we want to help address that gap, essentially, where we want to make it more accessible to any engineer, but in particularly full stack front-end devs who might be building a new GraphQL endpoint for their front-end application, and they have a bunch of data sources that they need to they need to fulfill their pages or their screens. And we built a bunch of features for that, right? So one of them is what we call the connectors, that you can then point your configuration to, let's say, a GraphQL endpoint or an Open API, REST API, spec databases like Mongo or Postgres, and we will then do a lot of that CRUD work for you. That's quite labor intensive. But even like manually creating resolvers and defining types, we've built an SDK in TypeScript that makes it a bit easier and less daunting, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I love, you said at the start, it focuses on like developer experience. And I think that really comes through when you start to play with the product. I have been exploring and playing with this a few times now for my own Academy API, and everything was just really simple. And I like that even though you built all of this in Rust, the TypeScript is the SDK, because that's where the developers are usually building these APIs are, right? You've went to them, we're using, I'm assuming, don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm assuming you use TypeScript and you didn't give people a Rust SDK because those are the people that are in this space. These are the people that are building these platforms or APIs. Is that correct, or did I just make that up?
No, I mean, it's certainly, I would say we have two kind of primary audiences that use Graphbase. One is the front-end and mobile developers who typically build what we call backend for front-end, which is a new GraphQL endpoint from existing APIs and data sources. They really appreciate the TypeScript SDK, that it can live inside the monorepo with code generation and all of that stuff in one place, right? So it's really great for them. Then there's kind of the platform teams, backend teams. There it varies. I think we still support SDL, right? That's kind of how we started, actually, because it is agnostic, right? But who knows? We might launch Python and Rust SDKs in the future. Because another thing we haven't talked about is the fact that we deploy the API itself to the edge, right? The edge is a global edge network of 300 locations that runs your endpoint in a V8 isolate. So we compile from Rust to WebAssembly to achieve that, right? So you get, if you think about Lambda, which is like a serverless function, but it's globally distributed. So without cold starts, you get 15, 20 milliseconds response times on a cold boot for all your users, right? So it's really, really powerful if you want to do authentication, caching, personalization, geolocation, that kind of stuff can happen right next to your user, and then you can go back to the origin depending on what you need to do. So it opens up to this really cool use cases.
You're just saying all the right things. I mean, my favorite three buzzwords are Rust, WebAssembly, and Edge. So, tick, tick, and tick. Let's touch on the Rust quickly before. Oh, yeah. I mean, I completely over-engineering the Rawkode Academy platform that we're launching. And I just made this, I was like, I'm not going to have a server in AMS1 or NYC or something like that. It's like, I want it to run at the edge. And I've just been on a mission ever since. But I'm not getting into that just now. What I want to get into is Rust. Now, Rust is not an easy language to learn. I've been writing Rust for 6 or 7 years now, and I still suck at it. However, I'm curious, did you have any experience with Rust before getting into writing Graphbase? Or was this your first project, and what has that learning curve been like, if so?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I started prototyping in TypeScript, 3+ years ago, just to get something up and running quickly. It was really hacky, and probably I don't want to share too much about how the first version was built, but it worked, right? And then definitely the number one goal was to have something that was performant, scalable, and compiled to WebAssembly easily, right? So the tooling for that was really important, and of course something that was typed, something that developed, something I can see myself writing for the coming 10+ years. And this was 2021, so WebAssembly was really mature in Rust. Rust itself was mature and was on the rise, and it's still on the rise. So it made a lot of sense for us to adopt it. But I've been using it a bit on the side, honestly. But my strategy was to go out and hire like A players in the Rust space, right? So people who had been building Rust for several years. So we brought on really knowledgeable people on the team, and that's really paid dividends as we built Graphbase.
Awesome. Love it. And maybe your team are the people I should be hitting up when I get stuck with a lifetime issue then, because that seems to happen very regularly. Now.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing all of that. It's really interesting. I think now is the time where we actually stop talking about how awesome Graphbase is and actually show people some of the things that they could do with that. And I think, as we explore, if there's any questions that people have in the audience or something you want to see, just drop them into the comments. We're always happy to tweak things as required. So let me pull up my screen share where we have the Graphbase website. You can find us at graphbase.com. That is Graphbase, Graf base. Now this is completely pointless to today's demo, but something that I loved, and I don't know if it's just something I haven't seen before. But I'm assuming you've right-clicked on your logo before, right?
Yeah.
There's just this neat feature. Oh, come on, computer. Now you're not going to do it. Oh, there we go. I don't know what's going on with my computer. Where it allows me to download the icon or the full logo, which was such a nice touch. Those small little details made me smile. I just thought I would share that, but completely irrelevant to what we're going to look at.
It's the small things in life.
It was really weird, and again, not that relevant. But I was exploring using Vivaldi as my browser, and I right-clicked. I think Graphbase was the first website I went onto because I was preparing for this, and I right-clicked, and then I was like, "Oh, that's a cool Vivaldi feature." And then it didn't work on any other website, and then I realized, "Oh, you've actually just built that into your website." And I was like, not only do you have a commitment to the developer experience, but it goes right across the stack. So from here, we get back on track, and we'll go to the documentation. And as always in Rawkode Live, we haven't really done anything in advance, although Frederick was kind enough to provide a few little bits of code to get it started. But we're going to start from zero and work towards getting this working. And we have a pretty cool couple of things to show in the process. So the Getting Started guide here will guide you through all the front ends and everything that you need to know to build your first API. You can go to the quick start, and this is one of the things that confused me at first, is that you have a Rust engine and CLI, but can deliver the binary to people via npm, right? That's what's happening here, and that wasn't something I don't think I'd actually seen that before until I was exploring Graphbase. But I guess again, it makes sense. If you're working or you're developing people that are using your product come from a Node or TypeScript background, this is a pretty nice way just to deliver that binary to them. So I thought that was a nice touch.
It is a thin wrapper on top, but yeah, npm is, most people have it installed, whether you're a Node developer or not. And then we are going to publish to Homebrew and crates.io as well. We're going to resume crates.io. It stopped working for a bit, but those will also be available soon.
Cool. All right. So people can create their own Graphbase project with NPS Graphbase in it. Now, let's take a look at what we're starting at today. So we start with products. It should be nice and simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we have a package.json for a products API, and you put in some of these scripts, which we'll get to momentarily. But in order to really kick things off, this Graphbase is the CLI, and this one here is your TypeScript SDK. And we have a Graphbase configuration. So from what I understand from the documentation, this is how you can spec out and build a GraphQL API when you want to start from nothing. This is the kind of your phase one. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we could take a step back and talk about what federation is and what a subgraph is, and then we can dive into how to start composing your schema.
Well, this is a
But what you're
standalone
seeing,
graph, right?
yeah,
So like, there's no concept of federation or anything like that at the moment.
yeah. I mean, there's a few things sprinkled in here that are relevant to federation. Up top there, we actually you'd say, hey, this is a subgraph in the
Oh yeah.
standalone arguments, and then we also add, the key to the end of the product there. The key, we're saying the field ID is the key, and that's a concept in federation. Um, and then
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So,
So,
but yeah,
well, I'll tell
go
you
ahead.
what. I'm going to break your example first, right? Because I always like to know how these things change things. So if I remove that, that doesn't break anything, correct?
Yeah,
All
that's right.
right. And we could just comment off the key, and now we just have a standalone subgraph. Is that correct?
Yeah, yep,
Or
that's right.
we just have a graph. Well, we have the potential here to have a GraphQL API. So
Uh,
let's get this working so that people can see what Graphbase does, and then we'll come back to the code. Sorry, sometimes I just like to go off script and see what happens. But we have apps, reviews. We did the reviews, right?
I think it was
Product.
product.
Yeah. I should never trust anything I say. Now, you've already created those package scripts for us. So if I pop this open, wrong one, let's pop the right one. And we should be able to run an npm install followed by an npm dev, and we get a GraphQL API. So let's just make sure that works. I don't have pnpm. We'll do it this way. Well, that runs just in case it's slow. We did get a question. Is there an install section in the documentation for a non-npm install? I don't think there is. And Frederick can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you go to GitHub, Graphbase, there is a releases page with binaries. So you can download your binary here. And you did mention that Homebrew and Cargo install will be options in the future.
Yes, very soon. But
Okay,
yeah,
very
that's a
soon.
good point. Yeah, you can download for your architecture directly from GitHub.
Okay, so we did that. We can now do dev. So according to the Graphbase CLI, we now have something running on port 4001. So if we jump back to our browser, we get this user interface, which is loaded a schema, and we can see that we have products. And if you're familiar with GraphQL, I'm assuming we can do products, ID, title. And on the right, we get a response. So that right in itself is just magic. So now we need to show people how that worked.
Yes.
So let's go through this. We have a graphbase.config.ts. And in this, you're using the Graphbase TypeScript SDK, where you're saying we want a standalone graph, an API, let's just call it for now. You're then defining the types within this API. So you're saying this is a product and it has these properties, ID, title, description, and price. And then you're defining a query endpoint called products, which returns. Yeah, I actually, so you're just using the type, right? You're saying you return a list of products. And then it has a resolver called products. And we're not going to touch on authentication or anything like that right now, so we'll just ignore this. But then you just export the config with your graph. I mean, that's the SDK in a nutshell. This is how you define what the API is. But there is a resolver that we haven't gotten to yet. Anything I said there incorrect?
No, that's exactly right. I mean, the point here is this is a code first approach. So we're using a builder pattern essentially to define your schema using TypeScript, right? So there's two camps. Some people prefer schema first. So most people who have built larger APIs use code first, but there's no right or wrong.
Yeah, I'm definitely an as code or code first person. To me, it just resonates better. I guess one of the questions I've got here is like this way of describing a type is very GraphBase specific. Did you consider using any of the popular libraries out there
like
Zod or Typebox or anything like that as a way to scaffold this?
Yeah, we're working on opening this up so that you can use your own kind of way of building and defining your schema. So that's coming quite soon as well. So you could use your own schema builder GraphQL library, and you can then just use the output of that executable schema to deploy and run your graph with Graphbase.
Oh, nice. I like that. Okay, so let's get back to the fact that we ran a query and we got data back. This data comes from the fact that you have said that we have some sort of resolver, which is just a string called products. So this is one of the bits of what Graphbase magic, where you correlate this string to a piece of code, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of use the file system here, right? So you have inside the folder resolvers, which is a predefined location. There's a products.ts file, and that maps to the name products that you define up there. And it returns a static list of 3 products.
Awesome. Now, I guess this is just TypeScript code. So, a static array of data is being returned, this could quite easily be executing SQL queries against a database, MongoDB, other GraphQL APIs, REST APIs, etc. Like this is where you connect Graphbase to your data model and make things work.
Yeah, nice. Exactly right. And you can create as many resolvers as you want, right? So what we do under the hood, similar to, let's say, Vercel, is we take these resolver functions, we bundle them, and then we deploy them to its isolated, to a V8 isolate, essentially, so that when a request comes in, it gets run in isolation. So it's really, really fast and low latency.
Nice. It definitely sounds like we could have an entire episode where we just talk about that deployment model and how you're doing that, because there's a lot of interesting stuff there. But let's focus on the code aspect for today. So we have products, and then if we take a look at reviews, it's pretty much the same. They actually they share a type, right?
Exactly. So this is another standalone subgraph, and then it defines the review type, obviously. But what you do is you open up the product type, and this is where Federation comes in. So you can then say, hey, on the product type, I want to add a reviews field, which then resolves from the reviews resolver in this subgraph.
Neat. Okay, let's get back to this because we forgot something over here. I removed the key here and the subgraph. And we still got an API that worked, resolved, and gave us data. So I want to bring back each of these and talk about what that changes. So if we bring back subgraph true, what does this indicate to the Graphbase engine? What does it tell it, and how does it change the behavior?
Yeah. So if you enable the subgraph behavior, you essentially expose two query fields that are needed for kind of federated queries to happen, right? So there's a service and _entities query in there that's required for this to function properly. You could see it, if you enable this and you open up Pathfinder again. Pathfinder is our in-house GraphQL Explorer we built.
Does that reload? That reloads. So.
Yes. So if you refresh the screen.
I'll restart.
You need to add ID as well. Otherwise,
all right, okay.
It needs at least one key directive. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, it detected the change. And we have to...
So there you see those. Yeah.
Okay, so what does the key do then?
So if you go, so the key essentially is something that is needed to correlate two types, right? So if you want to do, if you're querying for products and you want to get reviews, the gateway, the federated gateway needs to know, okay, how do I join these essentially?
Okay, so you're kind of indicating that the ID is the primary key of this type.
Yes, exactly.
So if we go back to the reviews one, this also has an ID, but that's not mentioned here because it just gets it from the schema itself.
Okay. Yeah, because the gateway already knows how to resolve products from the product service, but reviews will come from the review subgraph.
Okay, that makes sense. Cool. All right. So I'm always curious just what's happening under the hood. So like, I need to see what these do. Okay, so this returns the SDL. Go figure. And entities. This looks like something to do with GraphQL fragments, which is definitely not my strong suit, but let's see what happens. Huh, I guess that does something different. All right. Yeah, I don't understand what the entities endpoint is for. But I'm assuming that's just the way that the federated graph gets more information.
Yeah, it's a different way of introspecting a subgraph, essentially.
Right, okay, gotcha. So if you've already provided, I don't know why my alt tab keeps going to not where I want it to go, but you've already provided a top level package.json where we can run pnpm dev, which will spin up everything together, including the federation, which we haven't looked at yet. But let's do that. Dev. And what this is doing is running each of those graphs on their own port, but the federation one will delegate requests for the types to the correct API, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm assuming gateway on port 4000 is where we want to be.
Yeah.
That's my own API.
So now this is a clean slate, right? So the federated graph has no subgraphs. No subgraphs have been published yet. So the schema is empty. So now what you need to do is publish the product graph first, and then reviews, and you can look at the schema after that.
Right, gotcha. Okay, so let's take a look at the gateway first, and then we can publish to the gateway. So this also has a Graphbase config where we're saying that this is a federated one, and there's no other. There's nothing here that tells it where it's reaching out to, which is why the schema is empty. We have to publish each individual graph to the federated graph for it to be consumed. So if we come over here, and we'll do product, and it was pnpm publish dev, I believe.
Colon dev, yeah, that's right.
This runs a Graphbase publish dev, gives it a name of products, and tells it where to find that API. And if we come back to reviews and do the same.
So maybe first, we'll go back to Pathfinder just so you can see the kind of the progression. So if you go to the schema page where you can see the SDL, there you go. So there you can see product, and the product's query, right? One subgraph makes sense.
Yeah. So we can start to query this now. Like so.
All right, so now you're in team B, and you want to create a reviews subgraph that you publish to the federated graph without touching team A's code base. So this is what this enables, essentially.
So let's go back to schema. And now we have review.
And also you can see on the product type, you can see the reviews field, which will then resolve to the review subgraph. And this is really
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah.
federation.
Oh, you've actually extended this type.
Yes.
I didn't appreciate that from the code. Let's look at that again. And then on the config. Okay, so Team B has said, hey, we want to add something to product and we want to make our reviews queryable from it. That's nifty. I didn't, that skipped over me, and I've got a nice little smile on my face now. So I like that.
Yeah, these are the kind of aha moments that make you appreciate GraphQL even more.
All right, so let's get reviews, and we'll get content and rating. Wow, look at that. That's nice.
And then, as you see this, you can then imagine, engineering teams, 200 or even thousands of engineers collaborating on a supergraph or a federated graph in synchrony, and this is what this unlocks. And we can look at things later. There's, schema checks. That is essentially something you add for CI/CD to make sure that what you're about to publish will be composable. And there's linting, and then there's operation checks and all that stuff to make this more seamless for large teams.
Okay, now that you've made me smile and be confused at the same time, but a happy confused, I'm really curious about this extension point, because one of the things I'm doing with the Rawkode Academy API, like I said, WebAssembly, Edge, and Rust, is that I'm trying to get into a position where it's not microservices, it's literally everything I deploy is like a type. And rather than me changing or doing migrations, I'm using new services to deploy new functionality and then trying to bring all that data together at the front end, which is why I was interested in Graphbase in the first place. But what I didn't appreciate is that I could just take this type here. So I want to copy your reviews service and tweak it. And I'm curious, can we add arbitrary scalars to the product rather than a type reference? Would that still work?
Custom scalars is still work in progress. It's coming.
If I wanted to add a string or an integer?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, go ahead and add.
Okay, so one of the use cases I've got is say I have, I model my YouTube channel on my types. So say I have something called a live stream, and then I decide I want to add a field to that live stream. I'm very much trying to be very particular about not adding migrations. I don't want to get into migrations whatsoever. But I could do this with a new service that just injects, say it was a thumbnail URL, and I want to add that. So let's just do it and see if it works the way I think it does, because that would be really cool for me. Let's copy reviews, and we'll call this, what else do products have? We'll call it link, right? This is our link service. And I'll delete the Graphbase directory, because I think that may cause issues. I'll change this to be link, and I'll give it a new port, like so. And we'll modify this.
You want to change the name too in the publish script, the name of the subgraph.
All right, let's get there. And I'm going to do g.string like this. And that you're saying this will allow me to enrich that type with a new value, which is very nice.
Yeah, I mean, you'll need a resolver I mean, sure, in this case, it's just an empty string. You could do that too. But typically you'll want a resolver to return some data of that field.
Okay, so link to kagi.com, google.com, and we'd be remiss if we didn't do graphbase.com. So this isn't going to be a review. This is now, well, I guess this is just going to be a link, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I guess it depends if you want to create a link object, which is typically I recommend doing that. Like try to think of everything as types or entities rather than just a string.
Okay, so we would have something like this, and just in the sake of completeness, let's not leave any sort of whole thing. Does that change my config then, or does this still?
Yeah.
It's now a reference to my link object, right?
Exactly. So you need to define up top, a link type, a reference here.
Link. And I'll need to rename that file. Links. So I need the type. Okay. Link. All right. So, with this resolver, what's
is it? Sorry, is it a list or maybe you want to omit? Is it just one link? Maybe you want to omit the list. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I guess what I'm curious, right, is how does it connect? Oh yeah, because you got the ID of key, but I'm assuming the link. I'm confusing myself now. I'm wishing I hadn't gone down this path. This ID here, is this the product ID or the link ID?
This is the link ID.
Okay, so how does this resolver know to fetch links for the product?
Yeah, so, in the resolver function signature, you have four. The first thing is the root or the parent, and in there you could then get the root, the calling, types ID. So you could kind of deconstruct here and just get ID if you wanted to, and then you can use that to fetch links for that product, right?
Okay, so let's assume someone's interest is piqued here. I assume they are for sure, and they want to know how they work out what that signature is from a documentation. How do they get
go
there?
Go to resolvers on the left, section overview, and here there should be an example somewhere.
Oh yeah, resolver function. Okay. Root Rx and context. Okay. Right, okay, got it. So I'm assuming this is kind of what we were trying to do with the root and then extracting a value?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we pull out the root. So what's args then, sorry?
Okay. So I guess like you think about like root in this case, you have a product type, right? So the link field is going to get called from the product type. So root will have, existing fields in there, right? So you have the ID, for example. So that's going to get passed in the root. Args is if you have a query, like if there were arguments to this link field, let's say, I don't know, maybe for
Like
an
if we
image,
did
it could be
something
like,
here where we said filter name.
well, but on the link field, for example. Yeah,
Right.
like that would be for the product resolver, you would get the args, and that's the second
Okay, so
example.
we can do something here equals root, and we're trying to fetch out the ID, and you said that comes, I mean, would that just work?
Yeah, you could deconstruct it there or write in the signature itself. Typically do that.
I'll leave it like this.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm going to get really nasty now, right? So if ID equals 1, I'll assume it's going to be a string.
Yes.
Which means we can remove the ID from our... I mean, it doesn't really have to be a type now, but I guess...
Well, the link type is nice to have an interface up there, I think.
All right, I'll remove the ID because I don't think we need it, and we'll just put URL.
No. Okay.
And we'll have URL, like so. I'm sure people are watching me going, what the hell is this idiot doing? But we started, and I feel like I need to do it now.
This is how this is why the database was started many years ago.
So, all right. Now we can just return. You get nothing. So this is a very crude resolver, and it's returning a link. Can I annotate that? No.
Well, we can look at this later if you want. There is in docs there's this code gen, experimental code generation that allows you to do kind of strongly typed resolvers. Quite nice too.
Yeah, I was just curious because my interface is now unused. So, I mean, I can just do this, but...
Yeah, sure. You don't need to do it.
So let's go back to my madness over here, where we have a URL. This disappears, and this gets resolved with our resolver.
I think you do need ID.
Because of the key.
Otherwise,
right?
the key will, it will complain. But, yeah.
I mean, does it have to be unique?
No.
No.
I don't think so, no.
If this doesn't work, I'm very sorry. But I was following a train of thought, so...
But you need to also update the type definition in the config. You need to add ID there.
Gotcha.
And then before you publish that, go to the package script as well, because I think it has the wrong name.
No, I changed it.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, you did. Okay, I missed that.
Okay, so let's see what happens. So we can do a pm install. And we can add this. Oh, no, we don't have to add it because you're doing a global pm dev, right? So I should be able to just do pm package x pm publish dev.
Oh yeah,
it's probably just because it's not started. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Root query object not defined.
It's still not okay. What? Oh yeah, you don't have a query in here. But no, you shouldn't have to.
I don't think we have a query anywhere else. Yeah.
No, you're right.
All right, let's see if my local, let's check it out on my port, right? So, that might be an issue. Oh no, there we go. Ah.
Oh, I know what mean, you actually stop the whole thing, right? So if you stop it, the in-memory representation goes away in local dev. So you need to start over. So you need to do, publish products, reviews, and then link. Now that everything's running.
Right. Okay.
We don't persist the state.
Links. Ooh.
Okay.
I'm just breaking everything to do. There we go.
All right. There you go. Well done.
Complete random tangent, but that is super powerful. I am so happy and impressed. And I had no idea that feature existed whatsoever. So yeah, that's amazing. All right, thank you for entertaining me. Let's get back on track. So this is really powerful. And let's focus on that use case just so that it's really cement that into people's heads. You're working with a whole bunch of teams. You're all working towards one API. And, traditional routes would be we all build our different REST stuff. We stick an API gateway in front of it, and then we hope that everything works together. But what Graphbase is doing is different. The teams are independently working on their own small little part of a global graph, their own subgraph, defining their own types, their own resolvers, and we're getting data. They can then take their graph that they're happy with, they've tested, all good, they publish it, and the federated graph starts to pick all this up. And we actually seen that in progress, right? We published one, we checked the schema, we published one, we checked the schema, we're enriching it all the time. Then there was the tangent. Okay, we realized these subgraphs can actually extend other parts of the graph. I'm assuming there's a schema registry that if my link service tried to add ratings or reviews, we would get that error during publish and say, sorry, you can't do this. This already exists. That workflow it's got to be an enabler for teams. They've got to be able to increase their velocity. They don't have to worry too much about stepping on each other's toes because the graph consolidation, the schema, all of that works together to give them something that is guaranteed to be correct or it'll fail to publish. Again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but does that sound correct? Is that what's happening here?
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly right. It's built with this very use case in mind where your team evolves from one monolithic code base and graph into multiple subgraphs. And it's really, really nice to have some guardrails around that and during CI/CD catch issues so that when it goes to production, you have confidence that it should work,
Okay, you mentioned CI/CD, so I think that loops us nicely into let's get this into production. And we could repeat those publish steps that we've done, but you actually have an integration with GitHub to automate this for people, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I guess the first thing I need to do is, we can stop testing this. We're happy with it. I'll even just kind of shut this window down. We're in the top level. I can just do my YOLO commit. In fact, my workspace, has that got a wildcard in it? Yeah, cool. I was wondering how that worked there. We could do git init, git add, ship v.1, right? This is it. We're going to start making money. And I can push this. Get remote ls list. Oh, why can I never remember how to do that? Don't know why I bother trying to use the git commands. So this is your upstream, which we don't need. And this is my federation. Okay, so we can do a git push origin main. Now that's not going to do anything by default yet because we've not hooked anything up. But if we do go to GitHub, I've got my ship B1 here. So shall we use the Graphbase UI to connect this all up and deploy to production?
Let's do it.
So let's sign in. And create project. I'm going to have to adjust my permissions. Federation demo. So I'm just giving the Graphbase application access to what we need. Use my passkey.
Such a nice upgrade, passkey.
Yeah, 100%. Let's give this a wee refresh. There we go. So I could just import this repository. I've never done this before, so I don't know what this looks like.
Yeah, so there are two things to pay attention to. One is the name of this. So I think the first thing you want to do is the gateway, right? So you probably want to give it Federation demo dash gateway or just a gateway.
Mm-hmm.
And then the root folder is going to be /apps/gateway. And that's it. If you have any envars, you can add them here, but we don't. So go ahead and deploy.
Nice confetti.
Confetti. Yeah, we got to celebrate.
All right, so let's.
So now,
should we take a look at this?
Deploying.
Oh, we don't get Pathfinder, or do we?
It's in the dashboard. It's not.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. We'll give that a second.
So if you go to, it's usually quite quick. I'm surprised it takes this long.
There we go.
Yeah, here you go. Okay. So yeah, empty state. No, nothing in schema yet. And then go ahead and go to the home account overview and then create 3 more, I guess. Product, reviews, and links.
Okay. So product, apps, product. I'm going to just copy that for next time. And oops. Reviews. And links. Woo. Nice. So this is. Oh, well, let's come back to that. I was wondering, right? This is obviously connected to Git now. So if I do a Git push, it's going to do updates. We can confirm that in a minute. If we come over to our gateway, I'm assuming right now we still don't have any. Yeah. So how do we see we're happy with our subgraph? We want to publish it to the federated.
Right. So what you want to do here is you go to the overview there, the left tab, far left tab, and then you can see the subgraph section. There's a snippet there you can kind of copy.
Yep.
And then, but what you need first is the schema SDL, right? So this is typically something you do in CI/CD, not in the terminal like one-offs, but for the demo, let's go ahead and do that. So what you want to do is go to the product subgraph overview in the dashboard.
Oh, yep.
You open a new tab or something. Okay, fine. Go to the products one, and then copy the URL. So take the one, the bottom one.
Yep.
Yeah. And then you go in the terminal. You can do GB, which is an alias to install, introspect, GB introspect, or just Graphbase introspect, and then you paste the URL. So this shows you the SDL here. So you pipe that to schema, or SDL.GraphQL. It's fine. And then you go back to the dashboard for the gateway. and then you copy that snippet, and that's how you want to replace the name. Yeah, there you go. And the URL is the one you used above. Yeah. And then give it the product's name. And that should be what you need to publish the first subgraph. Oh yeah, okay.
Oh, because I copied the MPX.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
All right. So let's refresh this. I don't even have to. It's already shown up, but there we go. We now have our subgraph.
Yes. Okay.
Maybe.
Interesting. So what happens is you
there
have
we
the
go.
registry. Yeah, there's the registry, which triggers a deploy. So if you go to the changelog tab, you can see what you just pushed here. And then if you go to the deployments tab, you can see that the schema registry enabled another deploy. There's a deployments tab there. There you go. So you can see that, the registry initiated the deployment. Once the deployment is done, you see the updated version.
That's
so this happens every time someone publishes a new schema.
Okay, and I'm assuming there's a GitHub action to automate that in a workflow.
Yes, exactly. So another thing we haven't touched on is checks. So typically you run a schema check. So if there's a checks tab there, which is essentially kind of linting, operation checks, that kind of stuff you can do, but I don't think we need to go into it now. But you typically run that, assuming it's good, you then go ahead and publish it. Otherwise, the check becomes red, which means there's something wrong with the schema you're trying to publish.
Ah, nice. Very, very cool. I like this. You also provide analytics, and I've seen in the documentation earlier, there's authorization and caching as well. But
yeah,
there's a lot that Graphbase is making your life a lot easier if you want to build out a GraphQL API.
That's the goal. I think edge caching could be potentially another episode, but it's super exciting, I think, because if you think about the fact that you have compute that's globally deployed, the caching layer comes with it, right? So you can really, really quickly get cached response times for everyone in the world, right? So e-commerce, travel, logistics are some of the kind of use cases that use Graphbase to speed up response times, but also to protect their backend. They might be using a third-party vendor that's legacy or slow, but you're doing this lookup constantly. Caching can really help there.
Yeah, very nice. I'm curious. There's obviously the Graphbase API itself. I guess you build it with Graphbase. Is that right? Or should I not ask that question?
No. You should. It's a really good question. We're in the process of dog fooding it. It's not really quite there yet, but we will get there this year. So Graphbase will be built on Graphbase. And the reason is because we haven't enabled support for WASM yet as a customer of Graphbase. So we're building in Rust, obviously, and we don't support Rust resolvers yet. But when we do, we will be able to.
Okay, awesome. All right. We kind of took a bit of a tangent with my link syncing there, but we still have a little bit of time left. Is there anything you think would be worth showing to people before we go back to the talking and questions? We never really did connectors.
Yeah, we can maybe glance at them. We could maybe try one if you want, but we do have, like we said, the concept of connectors, and essentially all APIs are just data passing, right? That's really what it is. So we saw this pattern of connecting a data source, exposing fields in your API schema. It's quite repetitive and mundane. So we built connectors that introspect your schema and then generate the API schema for you. Depending on the quality of that schema, it can look really great. Sometimes it's a bit more awkward. Open API it really varies, I would say. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good. But what we typically see is people use what they can to generate, and then they can extend and customize with the configuration file, like we did in the subgraphs. So it's a really nice kind of way to just speed up your time to market.
Nice. Yeah, I think a good example here is obviously you can connect this to GraphQL, but hooking it up to Postgres or MongoDB and getting that, not having to worry about building those resolvers is a very big time saver for people. I like that feature as well.
Yeah.
All right, let's.
Maybe we could just feature or highlight some of the experimental stuff. We have KV, which is a kind of key value store that's built in to the resolver. So it's globally distributed as well. So you can use that to kind of store things or, use it like Redis, but it lives at the edge. It's a pretty cool feature.
All right, let's be brave. Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, let's go here. So, no, we shouldn't do it. Let's replace my link service because it's pretty useless anyway. So we have to, in the config, enable KV, like so. Now, I'm assuming we could add some sort of, it wouldn't be type, right? We'd add a mutation to store a value, store a link, yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Look at this. Copilot's trying to get on board here. Let's see how close it gets, right? So let's use the documentation. We want to do a quick start. And this has given us a resolver function to get. So let's go to set. And we get this. So copy. And I'll just leave this here.
Yeah, we don't support inline resolvers just yet, but it's coming. So you need to create separate resolver files.
Yeah, this has to go in the resolver file, right?
Yeah, okay. For now.
Okay, so we'll just call this set.ts, where we export, and we know that we can pull in this root, and we can get the product ID. So we'll use this as the key, and the value, I'm assuming, would be an arg. So we need this.
Yeah.
And this would be args, and we'll just call this URL. I'm not sure if that's going to work, but I think that looks okay to me.
Well, I think both. The key will be an arg too. Like you'll have an input arg, either input object itself, or you have two input args key value.
You're right, yeah, because we're not. This isn't going to be. We're not in line of a product. This is a mutation query. So
yes.
Which means this now looks a bit silly, but whatever. It's okay. So if we come back here, what I'm not sure is what this mutation looks like. So I'm going to see, is there an example? Rather than asking you to get it from your head. Mutation resolvers. There we go. And we'll call this create link. And we said that it needs an ID and a URL. Like so. And it returns. Well, we actually haven't said what it returns, so I'll just leave that as it is. And we called it set. So, yeah, what is the return here? Is that just... Because we were just doing a KV set. Should we be really returning the value? Or...
Yeah, sure. Right. I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, if it's a typically you return like the payload and there's a type within there, and if there's any errors, but for now, keep it simple.
Okay. Well, we're just hacking this together to test out the KV. So let's go to our dev experience now. So we're going back to link. And what we want to do is pm dev. Hopefully it's not broken. Seems happier than I expected. And we go to path. Oh, my camera just went off. I wonder if it said battery exhausted before it did that. Let me grab my phone. Okay. Better. Okay. So we don't have anything here yet. So what did I get wrong?
It's a mutation, so there's a separate tab in the UI. You see the mutation. There you go.
All right. One. Graphbase.com. Do we just execute that like so? Oh, yeah. And that's the return value, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now...
And just while you do that, part of the DX you want to achieve is you don't have to think about infrastructure. You didn't have to install Redis or set up any YAML files, anything. It just works. In development and in production, you have KV store.
So I guess we'll need to write a resolver to do the KV get, right?
Yes. You can hook it up to the one you have, I guess, right? Just need to
yeah, so we could call this links and then modify that resolver, okay. And this would need to be ref link dot list. And then if we come to links, let's take a look at the set example. We can swap all of this out and do a get key as long as we provide args or expand this for key. I think. The challenge will be, ID and URL is what we do in the set, right?
Yeah.
Let's remove this product. I don't know. How are you feeling about that? Confident?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So it's just compiling, reloading. All right, let's see. Sure, it's my fault. All right, let's step through it. We have a type, we have an ID and a URL. We create something here. We have a query. So I'm assuming my KV get is a bit wrong, but I made that up, so that's probably fair. So let's come back to KV. And I guess it's a list.
No, there's a get as well.
Oh, okay.
That's the one you want, right? It returns. Might need to destruct.
Oh no, the problem is then I'm doing a get, but my thing here was to return a list, but it's actually just going to be one link stored at the key, right?
But I think you also need to think of the return. Like you need to destruct. Like look at the example in docs and what you're doing there. You're just returning the whole thing. You need to like.
I guess I need to return the type with the key and the URL with the value.
Well, you're expecting a string, isn't it? Or did you change that? Oh no, sorry. This is the get. No,
This is the
sorry.
get. Yeah. I mean, we could update.
Okay.
We could update the mutation to also. You're like,
fine.
don't touch anything. Just make it work. All right.
That's okay.
All right. Let's see where we are now. Pathfinder.
But I think you need to like destruct the return still. It's missing.
Right, okay. On the resolver, you mean, right?
Yes, in the get.
So let's talk about the debugging. Can I just do this?
Yeah. I mean, you can, if you add a try catch, maybe you can see what's going on. You need to add, like, if you look at the example, you need to add a curly brace around the value, like after const, before value, like that, you see?
Yeah, okay, gotcha. So we probably don't need that. Going to reload.
It's really bizarre. Could you add a try catch around?
Oops.
I wonder if it's just delayed. Like it looks. Try rerunning the whole thing. That looks bizarre.
Yes, I will. Is there any sort of verbosity on this?
Yeah, I mean it is. You can. You can add, if you want to see debug stuff, I mean, like internal, you can add trace too, but that's pretty verbose. So you should see.
Let's try this. Oh wait, that's in the wrong bit.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. And a restart's not going to hurt anything, so let's get that back up and running. Jump back to Pathfinder. No, I've done something wrong.
Okay, add a try catch around the whole, like from the start of the resolver to the end. Oh, I know what's missing. Sorry, I was blind. So if you see the examples, you need in the context object you have KV. You need to get it from somewhere. Like look at the docs, you'll see what I mean.
Ah.
See it? Yeah, there you go.
That'll do it.
I was wondering why it was like red under, so now we know.
I should have just copied this whole resolver. That was my problem. Oh, wait, well, there's nothing to get yet, right? So let's bring back our mutation. Let's just try. We'll just debug this for 1 more minute. We don't need to get it working. It was just me on a whim.
Sorry. It's all good.
Console.log e. And I'm going to do a restart just to give it the best chance, although I don't think we need it. And let's hit the create. I'm going to do that again to see if we get an error. Although I guess it's doing a set over the top. Oh, okay, that's a different error. An error occurred will fetching links. A non-nullable value is expected, but no value is found. So that tells me Yeah, this is, okay, so I'm calling a get when we should be doing a list, right?
Well, list returns everything, like all the
Yeah,
keys.
but we're doing a get. So our resolver expects there to be a key.
And are you passing the key, or is it called something else? Is it called ID maybe?
Well, I wasn't passing a key, so that'll be the problem.
Okay.
But if we do this as a list,
But you need to map it to the.
yeah. Okay, let's. Okay, let's just give it the right value. So we need to send, and again, you just
Is
use
it
the
ID
docs.
or a key?
Well, we haven't built this into the. We haven't. Oh. Sorry, I'm pure setting us up for failure here. We actually haven't built any sort of query that takes a parameter. So we need
Oh, okay.
args,
So
which
I
gives
see.
us an ID. And if we update our resolver, we don't want a key, we want an ID, where we get an ID and we return an ID. See, these things are really simple when you're not just me being a bit gun-ho with a typey. So if we let all of this restart, we should see that our schema changes. Yeah. So let's call it our create. Oh, Tom is in the chat telling us that we're being wrong.
Sorry.
Hey, thanks,
He
Tom.
found it.
So this needs an ID 1. Ha! There we go. There. So that was a long way to show off your KV feature.
Finally, well done. Yeah.
It is a really cool feature, and we're not going to go into the AI stuff now, not with my ability to type code, but you do have all of these AI services available with a bunch of language models, which is very, very cool. Access to OpenAI Whisper, Llama, and I'm not familiar with these ones, but very cool as well. So. All right, let's get back to big face mode. Sorry, I'm not going to type any more code. I can't be trusted. Oh, where'd my camera go? Oops, there we go. All right, yeah, from Tom. Yeah, thanks for hanging in there, Tom. Thanks for your help. I'll just reiterate, right? Very cool platform. Makes building GraphQL APIs easy, as long as you pay attention to the docs and don't try and make it up. The ability to hook into a key value store is very, very cool when you want, there are probably a lot of use cases where you could survive on that without having to reach out to resolvers. I guess it also provides a nice cache in there, but there's already a whole bunch of caching stuff that Graphbase provides if you go and explore that in the documentation. We've got connectors for Postgres, MongoDB, other GraphQL APIs, and more. I think, we've shown enough. I'm assuming people's interest is peaked. You've already said a few times during this episode, there's more coming soon, or this is coming soon. So can you, in the last few minutes, can you give us an idea of what the team are working on just now? What other challenges you're trying to solve? What can people expect over the next 3 to 6 months?
Absolutely. So, well, the news of this week is we are launching a brand new version of the dashboard. So something we've been building for a while, complete redesign, new stack. We're really, really happy with it. We're just figuring out the last pieces. That's coming very soon. Watch out for that announcement in Discord and Twitter. We're investing quite heavily in analytics and security right now. So we're going to have a bunch of things like field level analytics, tracing, that kind of stuff is coming quite soon as well. We just launched automatic persisted queries, which is a kind of performance optimization to avoid sending the operation payload over and over. And then soon we're launching something called trusted documents, which is essentially a security enabler where you can say these are queries and mutations that are allowed to be made to this GraphQL endpoint, and everything else will be rejected. We just launched the ability to kind of disable introspection, which is also quite common in production as a security. precaution. Batching is coming soon, rate limiting. An HTTP connector is coming, so where you might not have a schema, we're going to enable you to just write a simple kind of mapping connector to a REST API or otherwise that doesn't currently exist. And I think that the biggest thing we're working on now is the ability to self-host Grafbase, right? So there's two kind of things there. One is the hybrid approach where you deploy the gateway itself in your infrastructure. It's quite common among enterprises. But the rest, kind of tracing, observability, security, is hosted by us. And then lastly, the ability to deploy the whole platform in your own infrastructure it's a big undertaking, but it's quite popular among federal and the likes who might not have internet or they don't want internet. So that's also coming.
Awesome. Lots of amazing stuff there. And I'm very excited to hopefully see a SQLite connector.
Yes, so that's also on the roadmap. I forgot to mention that. Connectors take quite a bit of time, especially database ones. Like we spend a lot of time building the Postgres connector. We actually have some of the core team from Prisma join us to build some of these, the Mongo connector and Postgres connector. And even with their experience, it took us quite a while to build one that is performant and scalable and avoids N+1 queries and all that stuff.
Yeah, so, tough challenges, but I'm glad you've got good people working on it. Like you said, hire the best engineers and you build good software.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today and your patience as I was going a bit hacky on things. But I hope people enjoy Graphbase. Go check it out at graphbase.com. As a reminder, that is grafbase.com. Any final words, Frederick, before I say goodbye?
Thanks so much. GraphQL is better than REST. That's all I can say.
We'll end on that note and let the haters hit the comments later. All right. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you all soon. Have a good day. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for watching Rawkode Live.